So I used to read up to 12 hours a day. I was reading up to like three books a week, and some of my favorite books, some of my favorite nonfiction books are basically Sam Harris's Free Will, or I think it's called The Illusion of Free Will. I've read it twice, and it is a really good book. It's a really short book. It's more of like a long essay, and in it, he basically argues that free will is an illusion. And I'm genuinely I literally think or understand that free will is an illusion. You are a byproduct of prior causes that you have no choice over. It's just that your brain is making you think you make choices. What you do 10 years from now has been predetermined by prior causes that you're not actively making the choice to make you end up in that situation. Uh, if you change for the better, that was because it was predetermined. I'm a proponent of determinism, a concept that I didn't even know existed prior to me being, 24 years old or 23 years old. But it was relieving in a way to finally understand that the universe is deterministic, or at least we are determined by genetics and environment. Then before what I thought was that we all made choices and that life was random, when in reality life isn't really random, but it appears that way. Our life is a life on tram lines, but it doesn't appear that way because the tram lines are invisible. So that's one of my favorite books. Another really good book is The Magic of Reality by Richard Dawkins. As I said in another video, it basically explains how there's many creation myths across many cultures, across many countries and continents, and he basically explains, what is true, and he basically will explain a myth and what they believed, and now we know what the real cause of those things are that once used that myth to fill in the gap of knowledge. Brilliant book, really, really good book. I also read this book by Stephen Hawking called The Grand Design. It's basically a book on membrane theory, which is an extension of string theory, and it's a really, really difficult book to read. And he wrote it in a way for people that are not as educated in physics and theoretical physics, quantum mechanics, etc., for them to be able to understand it. And I barely understood it, but it was the most difficult book ever, and it was one of the shortest books I've ever read. It was like 190 pages or 200 pages long, but it was extremely difficult. But I enjoyed reading that book. Amazing. I also had the book. What was it? This is a very famous one. I had two copies, and I read a large part of it. But that one I didn't enjoy so much. It seemed like it was more technical. And one of my favorite books that is nonfiction. I mean that is fiction. That is fiction. Is Stephen Hawking's collection of short stories called 14 Tells Eventually. That has some of the scariest short stories I have ever read. The road virus heads north, and the Men in Black. Those are the two short stories that I've ever read that actually made me feel like the feeling of fight or flight. If I, though, I just, I, wa- that was true. Those were truly horrifying stories. I read them uh, past midnight when I was alone, and I was just in, like I was in the book. It felt like I was in the book. I was all zoned in. I've read so many books by Stephen King, and primarily his short story collections. And I have this audiobook on Audible called Darker something. It gets darker, something like that. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And but with Stephen King, I read his books and I've also listened to the audio version of them. But tests have shown that if you read a book and listen to the audio version and then you take a test, you score pretty much the same. So it's pretty much like reading the book. So those are some of my favorite books I've ever read.